Momentum bad. Animation good.
Hello, this is the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 451. We're talking about criticism, or not just criticism, but why criticism doesn't make you a bad fan or a toxic fan or whatever. Of course, those things, like, there are haters and all this kind of stuff, but idiots who just want to be like arse-hats, they do exist. But we're talking about the fact that to be a good fan doesn't mean you absolutely love everything that happens. You are someone who cares about something, and because you care about it, you have ideas about how things should go, or how, you'd like things to go, which is what being a fan's about. Being a fan isn't someone who sets up an altar like a weirdo and starts worshipping every single thing to do with something. A good fan is someone who enjoys a series, enjoys something, and they sort of think, now wouldn't it be good if this happened instead, or this happened, and or what was happening in this scene, that character was acting a bit out of character. That's what fans do, because they care enough about the stuff to actually think about it. So before we get into that, I should introduce Terrence and Baines. Hi, Terrence and Baines. Hello. I'm fans of these guys. I love them. No matter what, I have shrines to both of them, so yeah, I got them.
And that's why he checks on us every single, moment, and tells us when we're out of character.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not allowed to change their clothes even without my say so.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a toxic relationship. Well, before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured comic this week, which was the Jacket comic. The Jacket comic. All right.
Cool title. I like that title.
So, I'll talk about the Jacket comic now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was the Jacket comic. Colton Emerson dreams. He dreams of a life of action, daring do, and bizarre supervillains. A life of something bigger, something better and more meaningful. Meanwhile, reality smacks him down hard. He's working in a dead-end job, fixing dead watches, being a bastard to customers, and living under a weirdly caring dictatorship in a police state. But all that is about to change with the discovery of a rather special jacket. A jacket that confers on the wearer some very unusual physical enhancements. Perhaps his dreams aren't really dreams after all. This is an action superhero story with drama and comedy. It's all digital and mostly black and white with very professional looking art. The creator is collectively known as RTH or RT Haderman, which is a combination of the writer Biamonte and the artist Hadelman. Yeah, that's it. And it's rated M. It's a good-looking comic. Yeah, it's mostly black and white. The covers are nicely coloured, but the artwork is sort of very classically black and white. It's professional. It's slick work. The story moves along at a good pace. I like this idea that even though the guy's he's in his normal everyday life, it's sort of pointed out that, yeah, this is his normal life, but it's not really normal because the police are sort of very caring, and the politicians sort of speak in very cultish sort of terms, they love you and all this kind of stuff. So it's sort of off kilter, off center, which lends it a very interesting sort of view of this world as you're getting into it. Anyway, so the Jacket comic is quite an interesting comic. Get into it and read it if you like alternative superhero comics, which this is one. Okay, it's rated M. And that was the Jacket comic. All right. Comics come in jackets, don't they?
When it's cold out.
So next up we have the music, which is Gumwallis has given us a theme to Ripping Off King Arthur. Ripping Off King Arthur. And he describes it as being an unusual comic, and this is an unusual theme for it. So we're all, and I'm going to talk about the actual music now. So we're all preparing for the big event here with this theme. It's a weird mixture of the Rocky theme, a fantasy epic, and an 8-bit video game music, as if we're about to see a pixelated medieval fantasy themed version of Mortal Kombat fight showdown to the end. So let's all fight for this big showdown. Here we are. Take it away, Gumwallis, with Ripping Off King Arthur. And that was the musical theme to Ripping Off King Arthur. And King Arthur is, of course, a band-aid, and when you ripping it off is the best way to do it quickly, because it doesn't hurt as much. No, that's all bullshit. It's a great comic. You should have a read of it. It's by Arspitizer. Arspitizer? Oh my god, what a name. Arspitizer. Okay. Criticism and fans. So my idea behind this I wasn't talking about any particular movie or person or whatever. I was just talking about the idea of, when you're a fan, you tend to care about things a lot more than a non-fan. The kind of people who will respond to a criticism of a movie by saying, oh, it's just a movie, or it's not for you. Those people we ignore because they don't care. And I think Used Books commented on a Facebook post I made. It's like saying the opposite of loving a movie isn't hating it, it's just not caring. Someone who doesn't care. So, and if you don't care, then why should we even listen to you? Why should we care about what you say at all? So these people who say, oh, it's just a movie. Well, tell you what, we all know it's just a movie. We all know this is just a creative project. We all know it's not real, but because we enjoy the story so much, we care about it and we're into it. And that's what you do when you enjoy something. So, and when you don't care about it, well, why should you even talk about it? Why should you even have any opinion at all? So, anyway, so my idea was that, when you're a fan of something, you care enough about it to go into details. And you think, oh, maybe this scene could have been different, or what was this character thinking? Why was this character wearing this outfit? This kind of stuff is the thing that really strikes a chord with you. You get so much into it. And that is what a fan is about. Not just someone who blindly praises something no matter what. We've got there's an analog for that in the real world when you have people who love a country no matter what the country does. These are crazy mad so-called patriots, and everyone thinks they're idiots except for themselves, because these people tend to be dangerous. They tend to be the ones that turn into terrorists and nuts. And or also, if they love like an actor or something like that, when they love them no matter what, they tend to turn into stalkers and, dangerous people. So
in general, it is bad advice to blindly accept anything without at least passing it through some kind of critical thinking test, let's say. So, because if you do that, then you are basically losing a lot of your capacity for independent thought. And when you lose your capacity for independent thought, then you become an amplifier for someone else. You are not your own self anymore.
Very much so.
Exactly. You are simply someone that will repeat what someone else wants you to repeat and make his message bigger rather than add to the conversation with your own spin to things, with your own point of view and your own evaluation.
You become a cheer squad.
Yeah, basically, or a chorus line or whatever. You are basically relinquishing part of your humanity even, because when you become an amplifier, you don't matter anymore. Just your numbers do for those people that are successfully convincing you to become that for them. And that holds for everything from politics to quote unquote patriotism, because you are not a patriot when you do that. You are simply, you have chosen a team, and that team could be in athletics, it could be in politics, it could be in art, it could be anywhere where there are teams. And
true.
I would strongly advise against it, because you will wake up one day, hopefully. You may never wake up, but if you do wake up, you will look in the mirror and see someone that you don't recognize, like Arthur has, had happened to him in my comic. So, yeah.
Yes, very much so. I was just going to make a point in advance of that the 20th century, our best, all of our best fantasy and sci-fi and pop culture was created by fans, good fans, thinking fans. All these famous people like Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, George Lucas, even with his Star Wars. They were all mega fans of other franchises, not franchises, so to speak, but other properties. And they were huge fans, and that's how they got into doing that. But they just weren't fans who loved stuff. They were fans who thought and mixed stuff together and thought, wouldn't it be a little bit better if this character did this, or if I mashed this together with this? And so that is the good of fans. That is why fans, real critical fans, are the way to go, because they're the ones who create, and they're the ones who, become the new creators. These kind of cheer squad people don't amount to anything, or if they do create, they create garbage, which has happened. There was people who I think L. Sprague de Camp, I think he might have been not a bad one, but there was some people who took on the Conan writing, and took over like doing the books after Robert E. Howard had died, and it was taken on by basically people who were extra fans, but they weren't the fans who were critical. They were just the fans who, just loved it no matter what. And they started doing just pastiches and writing, the same story over and over again, but in, their own fake version, or taking original Robert E. Howard stories and just changing all the characters into Conan once again, and not being thinking fans and actually had a part in destroying that legacy for a time being before it was revived. But yeah, those kind of people are shits. Real fans have the freedom to not like things as well as like things. So yeah, that's how this is what this Quackcast is about. But Baines and Tance, we just did our Quackcast video, started telling me about what's happened with Star Wars again, but and Game of Thrones, which was quite interesting. It's a real world example of these writers expecting, fan adulation no matter what, and not just the writers but the business. So I don't know who's behind it, like HBO or Disney or the big companies behind this stuff, expecting fan adoration for a property no matter what. And if they don't get that, then they're saying, oh, you fans, there's something wrong with you, you're not actually fans, we only want the people who are giving us adoration. That's all that matters, which is scary. It's just that's not what you should ever say, ever. So yeah, Baines, Tance, tell me about these writers, because I don't know anything about it.
Baines, you first.
Yes. Okay. So, yeah, they Benioff and Weiss, Game of Thrones fame or infamy. There was a huge deal made of how they got hired by Lucasfilm to do the new Star Wars movies. And if you're following this stuff, it's catnip to certain fans. And first of all, I'll say that, Oz, you're right about, like, some fans are nitpickers. Some just live on outrage and to create drama. And they're not necessarily even fans. There's sort of a troll kind of thing going on, or just an instigator thing going on. But anyway, there was a lot of outrage about Star Wars in recent years, of course. We've talked about it. And then there was a lot of outrage about the end of Game of Thrones. And as we all know, also. And the outrage, I mean, this is a side point, but the outrage towards Game of Thrones was from a lot of media types, funnily enough, who slammed Star Wars fans for their quote-unquote toxicity.
God.
That's what I noticed. Like, a lot of people who are media types are not necessarily Star Wars fans, but they are Game of Thrones fans. And so it was interesting to me to see the outrage over something they liked, whereas when it was another fandom they weren't connected to, it's like, oh, you're a toxic baby. But that's a side point, somewhat. Anyway, these Benioff and Weiss were hired by Lucasfilm to work on the next Star Wars, and then it seemed like only a couple months, but I think maybe this has been going on for a couple years, these behind-the-scenes deals, are now leaving Lucasfilm to go to Netflix and get a boatloads of money to go and work on, whatever they're going to work on Netflix to do their own stuff. It's unclear if they're going because they want to do their own stuff or because Star Wars they feel troubled by Star Wars. But recent rumors or headlines have said that a lot of it has to do with Star Wars toxic fandom, and they're afraid of it. And they've just gone through this sort of flame, this sort of what do you call it? They're running this gauntlet with Game of Thrones fans being outraged at them, and now they are afraid, possibly or allegedly, of the same thing happening with those toxic Star Wars fans.
Yeah. Oh God.
I mean, I'll say this: I've said it off the air or on Patreon. I don't remember if I said it, but in my take is, and I don't know anything that's going on, but is that if they are afraid of that, I mean, added to the mountain of money Netflix is offering, I mean, who wouldn't take that money, But, like, wouldn't they much rather not be under the microscope or under the spotlight at Star Wars and just go work on whatever invisible things they're going to work on Netflix, and just get paid? It's kind of like, be off the radar, be over there, get rich, or, face this potential horribleness at Star Wars. The thing is, to blame the fans for criticizing is completely wrong, which is your thesis.
Yeah, that seems to be the approach of a lot of people these days, that it's not, your opinions don't matter. It's you that matters, and you are the evil one. You are toxic. We don't care about what you think.
So
You suck.
yes.
You're a
But
hater.
before we go into that, though, I think that we should actually work some definition in so that we are all on the same page on what we are referring to, because a very big issue with all this cancel culture, outrage culture, and blah blah is that we throw around labels without defining them. So anyone can be anything as long as it supports or satisfies our narrative or helps out our narrative or helps out our position. But that is not the way that we should be doing discourse, because that is just parallel talking in the same vein where you have two dogs barking at each other and then they continue on their way. It's not real communication. So what are toxic fans? In my opinion, these don't actually exist. Toxic anything is not a fan. It's a person that likes to create toxicity, and they will go wherever there are, heightened emotional charges, or they will go to wherever there is popularity and attention, and they will create toxicity. So there are no toxic fans per se. There are trolls that will do the extreme stuff in order to either create, all this toxic atmosphere because they like it, or because they serve some kind of purpose. That depends on how much you want to see who benefits from the actual toxic, quote-unquote, fans. Because the fans themselves, the fandom is not benefiting from these people. The ones that are benefiting from these people are actually the ones being attacked in a very big sense, because they can invoke sympathy and they can get away with a lot of things because they're saying, okay, if you are against me, then you are just like this person, and so who has been extreme. And so what you are saying is that you are being extreme. It's the same fallacy where you have, like, this is done a lot in politics. They have this extreme person, either very much left-wing or communist, or very right-wing or Nazi, say something that is factual. So if you dare say that this factual thing is actual factual, you get stuck with a label of communist or Nazi, and people don't look further than that. This is a technique. It's not something that just happens. So, in my opinion, the toxic quote-unquote fans only help the franchise and only help defend something that is basically logically indefensible. Because if you could defend it otherwise, you wouldn't need the toxic fans. You would just have objective arguments, and that would be the end of it.
I mean, this reminds me of like where this kind of began, maybe, or where it entered my awareness was when Ghostbusters, the remake, came out. And apparently on their YouTube trailer, the most disliked movie trailer of all time on YouTube, there were legitimate criticisms of the trailer of the movie were being deleted, and the worst, sexist, nastiest comments were left up.
Okay, I didn't know that, but that certainly fits the pattern.
So it's completely, that really makes it clear what you're saying and how that can be weaponized to
absolutely. And I might be called out as being conceited or anything, but I will still say it because it's factual. I would take the challenge of making a gender-bent movie about anything actually be narratively worthwhile and sound, if I was allowed to actually create a natural, legitimate, intact, rule-following plot. The problem with a lot of these things is that they are creating very flawed products, and then they are using because maybe they are easier to make. I don't know. Maybe it's cheaper to get really bad script writers. I don't know. And then it's cheaper to get the trolls to create this idea that whoever doesn't like it is East, whatever is fits, and be done with it. So maybe.
I mean, it's a puzzle for sure, man. You wonder what's going on, I mean, they do say that it's just as hard and it's just as much work to make a bad movie as it is to make a good movie. People are trying to make good stuff, but that seems to have changed lately. I mean, it's a lot of exactly what you're saying. It's gender bent, it's different, and maybe seems to be intended to promote more diversity and things, more progressivism.
And
the stories are falling apart. People.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm starting to believe that because society in general wants more diversity, or has wanted, let's say, more diversity. Sorry, my cat.
Your cat wants more diversity.
Yes, he does. He's a white cat, but he also has spots of color in. So yeah. Anyway, so and this is a proposal that you might entertain or reject immediately. But consider this: if you have a bunch of racist, sexist white guys that want to make people not want diversity, but people are generally wanting for diversity, what would be a good way to make them not want it? Flood them with extremely bad diversity movies, create this very toxic atmosphere around these particular bad movies where you forbid them to criticize them and thus make them better and fit the aesthetics of society. And then what will you push most of the people to do? To reject quote-unquote diversity movies because they have all this toxic atmosphere around them and go for the more conservative, more mainstream, again, quote-unquote, white movie.
Stuff,
yeah, the standard stuff. Because there's no other way to explain it. It's either.
So what do they want? If this is true, what do they want? What's the end game with
the
that?
end game would be to have mainstream society reject diversity movies because they are A, very bad, and B, they make everyone feel terrible because they are being called out as sexist, racist, or whatever there is under the sun. So choose either. Either you have extremely lousy script writers and producers, okay, that are I don't know, somehow through nepotistic channels getting the positions without merit, or you have this very elaborate genius plot by some kind of mastermind that wants to veer people away from diversity by giving them the absolute worst that they could possibly give them, and then force them to swallow it or else. So, and then force them to vomit.
Generally, I'd say that.
I mean, what supports that is that.
Well, I just want to say it would be the former rather than the latter, because people generally aren't that intelligent, masterminding everything. Most stuff in the world is driven by stupidity and carelessness than forethought and planning. So yeah. Anyway, go on, Bones.
I mean, it could be. My friend has a conspiracy theory, quote unquote, that makes sense to me. That the elite create political division and all these fights around identity and around all of these sort of non-economic issues as a distraction. It keeps everyone very busy, hating each other, while the people at the top can continue to run away with all the money. And it
Yeah,
makes perfect sense to me. And whether it's happening on purpose or just happening, to what degree, I don't
yeah.
know.
Take your
It's
pick. The
obviously
fact
hard to say.
remains that things like this are happening, and I'm just suggesting hypotheses here that you will have to test, and you only can test by watching what is happening and who benefits from everything.
Okay.
Certainly, the fans aren't benefiting. That's a very because the fan. What does the fan want? The fan wants to get a fun movie or a fun, product. They are not getting that, and they are also getting, all this kind of abuse
Well,
to their person.
I don't think anyone's really benefiting except for like film rights go for billions of dollars, and Disney sort of buys up a whole huge chunk of
But
creative
Disney
products.
is also losing money these days.
But the thing is,
Yeah, that's what's a puzzle.
They've sort of cornered the market, and when they make bad decisions, they will start to fail, and this is how business generally works. If you look at the way what happens with stock markets and stuff like this, and the property market, people buy up huge big chunks of stuff in monopolies when everything's good, and they don't know how to manage it, and they mess it up, and it starts to fail, and that's just what happens. Business is driven by idiots. And
or it could be also the consideredness of monopoly in the sense that you're gonna have what I'm dishing out and you're gonna like it. But again, we have the same end result, and the point of this, the whole point of this entire set of hypotheses is that we have to be in a position to coolly separate those people that are either amplifiers or people that thrive on toxicity, whatever that is, and people that are simply fans and they are looking for something specific that involves the rules of writing and whatever else comes with that.
Yeah, and most people are fans. The so-called toxic people, the trolls, are always a tiny minority. Always, in reality, there's hardly any of them compared to all the other people that really think about stuff and are really passionate about stuff for whatever reason. So it's always unfair to characterize negative opinion of films or comics or whatever else as being toxic, because you will invariably tar everyone with the same brush, and you'll characterize them completely wrongly. And that comes down to the old rules of debating. That's a very simple no-no. Ad hominem attacks are a childish way to go. That's the people who are real neophytes at debate start doing that. I did that when I first started to debate. You don't do it.
Yeah. Ad hominem attacks, and the second thing is axiomatic talk, which is talking in axioms. So making a statement and presenting it as fact and eternal truth or universal truth without providing any support for it. So if you do that, that actually cuts the debate off, because the point of a debate is every statement you make should be supported by arguments. So when you say that this is fact, for example, I don't know, if you don't approve of a female character in a movie, you are always at least suspect to sexism. Okay, this is an axiom, and that should be supported with argument. And if you don't support it with arguments and just put it forward as if it is, truth under the sun and we don't touch it, then you are speaking in axioms and axiomatic talk. Right. And you shouldn't do that, because that means that you actually are preaching and not debating.
Yeah, but these things are sort of, always a case-by-case basis, not universal objective truths. one of an excellent example of this kind of stuff was when Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola sort of came out and said they don't like the Marvel films because they're not cinema or whatever other things, and people started attacking them, saying they're over the hill. They're too old. They don't understand stuff anymore. Stuff has moved on. They're just old, and their opinion means nothing.
Wholesale, and especially like Francis Ford Coppola, they are all these people are bastions of cinematic art. So at least, first of all, they are allowed to have their opinions. As everyone, you don't need to have contributed to the art in order to have an opinion. That's another thing. But also, if a person that is so knowledgeable in this art says something, okay, maybe first hear them out. Why are they saying this? What is their reasoning behind it? Listen to that reasoning and then reject it. You don't have to accept it, but listen to what they have to say. Maybe you will get better, even if you don't agree. Maybe there will be something in there for you to take and get better.
Could be an interesting discussion. The thing is, no one is too old to comment on cinema. No one is too old to comment on this or that, or too white, or too female, or too black, or too coloured, or too whatever. Everybody's opinion on that kind of stuff is valid. And we shouldn't just dismiss people on just arbitrary grounds of this and that. And that seems very wrong to me. These people are super duper fans of cinema and film. And, their opinion is totally valid. If they don't like it, that doesn't have to destroy my own appreciation of Marvel films. I love the Marvel films. I think they're great fun. But because they say they don't like it, that doesn't mean, oh my God, my whole worldview is threatened. I have to go and support it by attacking these guys and just take them down a peg. People who do that are idiots. They're just...
that must be just a very fragile existence, I think.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to take them down. On the other hand...
Who was attacking?
Take it to the webcomics. If we were to stop doing what we were doing every time someone told us that what we make is crap, I think that 90% or 99% of webcomics would never be finished or even get made. So, yeah,
And what were you going to say, Baines?
I'm not sure. I like the move to webcomics there. Yeah, and I agree.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you, Baines.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I was going to say, on the other hand, Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese are both very noted filmmakers with a lot of power, and part of the Film Academy and stuff like that. By saying they don't like Marvel films or whatever, or they don't think that's real cinema. You might be worried that, they'll exclude it from the Academy Awards, or, they'll use their power to minimize these films somehow. Sure, that's a valid concern, but they're not necessarily doing it. All they've said is they don't think they're cinema, which is valid. So, yeah.
And opinion, and I could see why entertainment journalists would want people's comment on that, because it's pretty huge.
Yeah.
Those are huge names, and those are huge. Marvel movies are huge, and so it's if Martin Scorsese says something, like even now, he's sort of really putting out great stuff still. It's worth listening to and not obeying. Like you said, I agree with you guys completely. Mm-hmm. But it's worthy
it makes me wonder, like, if someone super popular with certain crowds came out and said something against whatever else they are fetishizing. Like, I don't know, if you had Obama come out and say that The Last Jedi was crap, that would be like the most fun experiment ever. Like, to see,
it would be fascinating.
Who would start hating Star Wars and who would start hating Obama just because of this one stimulus. That would be awesome to watch, actually. I would pay money for that.
Yeah, people
So.
wouldn't know what side to support. You know, the whole reason
It wasn't a good movie. I don't know how to do an Obama impression.
That was good. The whole reason I came up with this topic was, you know, mainly because, like, on the last Quackcast, you guys were sort of talking about, you know, like examining The Last Jedi and, well, The Force Awakens, whatever. And, you know, like, looking at from all different points about it and stuff like that and saying, yeah, this is not so good and this is bad or whatever. And what really came to me was the idea that, you know, these are valid and interesting discussions, really, really interesting discussions about a franchise and about a world that you're really into. And you wouldn't have those discussions unless you were into the world, unless you had some kind of emotional investment, which made it really interesting. But because we have these idiots going around saying, trying to shut people down, saying, yeah, look, you can't say anything bad about this film because, you know, this and this and this reason, you know, you're not allowed to say, or just dismissing people who, you know, have negative opinions as being haters. This term, hate, I've always disliked that haters term. It means that no longer, you know, can people really have these interesting discussions because it's sort of, you know, your forums for having these discussions are very much more limited because, you know, you're being like shut down and driven away, or, you know, there's negative encouragement to have those discussions in public places or whatever, because you'll be shouted down or you'll be attacked. And you really shouldn't be when you are not being a troll or a sexist or, yeah, someone who's like, you know, racist or whatever. You're just having a talk about something you love. And sure, it's not like, you're not being effusive and saying, oh, I love it and stuff like that. Well, so what? So what? That's, like we've said all throughout this, that's not what a fan does. A fan looks at stuff with a much greater perspective, like an overall perspective, and they can do that because they love it so much. Which you couldn't do. You could only be extremely praiseworthy if you didn't understand it, or if you've only had a superficial appreciation. Anyway, go on.
You can have extreme praise and understanding it, but you will need to actually know why you are praising it. If you are you can love The Last Jedi somehow, I guess, but if you do, you have to know why you are liking it. And what I have noticed is that people that say that they liked it generally haven't been fans of Star Wars before that. Like they are fans of these new movies because they are not aware of the previous elements, like the universe as it was before. So that is very legit, in my opinion, because if you come into the fandom assuming, like, I think it's basically split into two different fandoms by now, but assuming, like, if you come into the fandom not knowing anything except those movies, then yes, absolutely, you might be able to like it because you don't have all the confounding elements and expectations that the other fans that have been fans from the previous movies do have. So, yeah, if you don't know who Luke Skywalker was, of course you will not mind having this weirdo hermit character that tried to kill off his nephew when he was afraid of him. Okay, so of course the other fan that has grown up with Luke Skywalker as a symbol of a person that tries until the very end and will refuse to kill even when everything looks lost, like he did with his father, then you will have objections to that. Both of these things are very legit, but we have to understand that this is actually what is going on here and not call previous fans problematic and the other ones progressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have an example. There is this newer fandom that is getting rebooted. I'm just trying to remember which one it was. That is getting rebooted in a way that the fans don't agree, and they are the same kinds of fans that are attacking, old Star Wars fans and old Sierra fans and stuff. And they went apeshit over that particular fandom because
Is
they
that
are putting the
Terminator?
characters in a way that uh, I don't remember. I have to look for it because I wasn't a fan of that particular thing, and I don't remember what it was. It is some kind of cartoon that took place like around the 2000s. So
Okay.
somewhere around there, and it was fine for them not to like it and demand, for this particular movie to be scrapped and everything. But yeah, the other fans that didn't like, the older stuff that they weren't familiar with, uh, are Easts of whatever nature. So
Right.
I think that this is the biggest difference between, the new fans and the old fans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting looking at it from those perspectives. Yeah, new fans and old fans, and people who aren't as invested in the canon versus these other people who create a connection with the new stuff, and that's fair enough. We have these differences. Like I don't watch the new reboot series of Doctor Who. I just never got into it. I just couldn't really. It didn't gel with me at all. I just like the original series of Doctor Who, which is fair enough. I don't care about the female Doctor and all this problem that some trolls have about that. I don't care about any of the new Doctor Who. I just like the original because that's what I grew up with, and it was just really cool. And the new stuff just didn't feel like that at all. It changed a whole bunch of things, and when these new fans of the series sort of talk about it, it's like they're talking about something different to what I grew up with. It's not the Doctor Who that I love, but that doesn't make me toxic. That I like the old stuff, and and because
Hashtag not my who.
and there's not a big thing about it because this isn't like a big fantastic media thing, so we don't have that big culture of calling old Doctor Who fans toxic. People just don't care at all.
Yeah, and that's another thing. And that's like if you were introduced to this very weird new Doctor Who, like I don't know Doctor Who, and I could never actually be enticed to get into this particular fandom. For some reason, I mean, I generally wasn't ever interested in getting to even watch a single episode. But assuming I was shown an episode and it was like I don't know, a Doctor Who that flew in the face of all the previous Doctor Who's, for me, that wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't throw me out of the narrative. It wouldn't throw me out of the immersion and suspension of disbelief. And it wouldn't pose any, problems for me unless the movie itself was very shitty. Sorry for the expression.
Yeah.
But then I wouldn't like it just for the quality of the movie itself, not, for the parameters of the character. So there are these two levels. So if the movie was objectively not good, then I would also not like it, but I wouldn't be angry that Doctor Who was not the Doctor Who that everyone else remembers, because I wouldn't have that kind of memory. But I still wouldn't like it. Even if he was the most super progressive ever, I would still not like it. I would be disappointed and not like it.
Right.
So, another aspect of stuff that we had talked about in the Quackcast was like there seemed to be a disconnect with this Game of Thrones, Star Wars kind of stuff, in that they don't really care or understand too much about fan reaction. And yeah, so their default is to go and say, yep, it's a toxic fan, or yep, it's a fan problem. It's not us as writers, it's you as viewers. There's something wrong with you. And that seems to be sort of biting them in the ass, because that's, these kind of people are their viewers. Their fortunes exist because of those people, of those fans who've enjoyed their stuff and sort of grown up with it, and well, not grown up with it, but sort of grown to like it. And I was thinking a good contrast to that are the Marvel film people who create films that have actively fostered the fans and sort of grown with those fans over a period of several years now. What is it, 10 years or something like this?
Yeah, like 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, so from Iron Man, the very first film in that that particular incarnation of the Marvel Universe, they've been actively kind of working with fans in a way and giving them everything they want. And it has worked. It has paid dividends because they've been very socially aware. They've realized that this films and this this creative world doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists because it has this, these like decades of fans and decades of goodwill, and it is part of the pop culture. It is part of culture in general, American culture, but world culture. And they've taken that on board, and the films are created with that in mind very, very strongly, and have been for quite a long time. And they've fostered that as they've gone and created goodwill. And it has actually really worked. Whereas this whole Disney stuff with Game of Thrones, well, no, that's HBO Game of Thrones, but the Star Wars, they've sort of thought, actually the fans and the people don't matter. It's the property that matters, and we're buying the property. This is something we have bought. We can do what we want with it. You will follow it regardless, because that's what you do. That's business follows the brand, and we have the brand now, so you're going to follow us. And they're treating it like just a business decision, like, I don't know, Nike buying, whatever. Okay, we're going to buy this brand because, or say, Gucci, puts their label on any, frickin' thing. People buy Gucci sunglasses, even though they're shit sunglasses. People buy them because they got Gucci written on them. And even though Gucci never made sunglasses, you're going to buy them because you like a brand. And that seems to be the root of this kind of, we don't care about fans, because you're customers, you're not fans.
I have to say, it's not only like, okay, if you don't want to give fans what they expect and are asking, then you better be in a position to create something so good that even though it is not what the fans expected or wanted, then they cannot say no to it. Like they will at least recognize that it is well crafted and well made, and it was an entertaining thing. And I'm thinking that Disney actually, which is weird that they're not doing it now, that they have been masters of this, because if we take all their, the Disney Renaissance of animation stuff, what have they been doing? They took myths, they took fairy tales that were very established, and they completely reconstructed everything, just keeping a faint flavor of the particular fairy tale and creating it in their image in a way. So if you actually read the fairy tales that Disney has made into animated features, they are often completely different, if not even opposite of what Disney presents. And as same goes for myth. and everything. So they create something that is, however, it goes against, what fans of that particular fairy tale or myth would expect, but at least it is a cohesive, entertaining whole that stays very consistent within its own thing that it is doing. And for example, when they released Hercules, and Hercules actually wasn't one of their most successful ones, but they didn't get really, tons of flack for it, not even here. Greeks are very protective of their mythology. We like our mythology as it is. We don't like to have people mess with it, especially when they bend out of shape. All the characters, even the nasty characters, we like them nasty. They were made there like that for a reason. So anyway, so Hercules is an abomination. Basically, it's like the worst you could imagine. Like if you pitched the idea to a Greek, you would be defenestrated. That's the only way I can put it. That's how.
That means they'd cut your head off. All that work.
Not really. I mean,
it means to throw someone out the window. That's what it means.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Defenestration. Out of the window. The thing is, however, that even within this abomination, the characters are enticing. The plot is interesting. The music is nice. And there are some songs that are even catchy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, you don't like it as an adaptation of the Greek myth, but okay, it's a kids movie. It's a thing. We take it as it is, and we don't really, consider it as something that we will get extremely mad at. We will be annoyed a little bit, but that's fine. And the thing is, this happens because it is actually, at least within itself, it is consistent and cohesive. And it follows story one-on-one. That's what I'm saying. And the characters are not cardboard. Same goes for 300. 300 actually had the decency of saying that we are not adapting the actual history of, Thermopylae. We are adapting this comic, and this comic is also not saying that they are adapting the actual history. So that's fine. We like that at least, you are acknowledging that it's not the thing that it's, as it happened, and that you are making something that is so loved. It has a effort put into it. The characters are interesting. The story flows. So it's fine. So the point that I'm trying to make is that not get what they expect, like iron-clad Spartans that look terrible, and we instead get very sexy go-go boy style Spartans. Okay.
Xerxes, a big porn model giant.
Darius is the weirdo that thinks he's sexy, but they were sound storytelling.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. And the characters were consistent with what they were presented to be. So I'm thinking that if you wanted to make something completely different from the source material, like, for example, in Star Wars or in Game of Thrones or in Ghostbusters and stuff like that, if you were at least true to narrative form and you provided narratively sound explanations for why the characters are the way they are, then, okay, maybe it would throw off the fandom for a little bit, but you wouldn't get this flack that you are getting. So that's the thing. And that's fans are actually pliable, and they are, even if they don't seem open, they will be open to something that is interesting, at least, and narratively sound and artistically has merit. Unfortunately, very plausibly, these new movies that claim, toxic fandom stuff, they have serious objective flaws.
They do. Yeah.
People so well said. Yeah.
People have been
absolutely.
historically very open to things. A lot of, like when I was saying with the Doctor Who, like I can't get into the new Doctor Who's not because they don't do things, the way I want them to. It's just because I was used to Doctor Who being a certain way. Not hour long, like half an hour long episodes that are part of like all of them, like 6 of them, work up into being a particular story. And these new ones, like half an hour and the story's over, like maybe 25 minutes or something, and the story's over, like from beginning to end. And that and a whole, like some other things, that to me that wasn't really Doctor Who to me. That was, something else. That was like, but for a lot of older fans, they've just taken to this new Doctor Who like nothing. I think for most older fans, not older fans, but for most fans of the older stuff. So yeah, that's like you were saying, it's really, fans are adaptable. If something's good enough, they're going to keep on going along with it no matter what. It's just when it turns crappy, objectively crappy, that's when you're going to get this schism. You're going to start to get that kind of severe reaction. Yeah, generally when you've got that kind of thing, it's not because of toxic people, it's because you've done something wrong.
Yeah, and a good example would be how the fans reacted to Heath Ledger getting the Joker role for Nolan and stuff. And like I remember that people were like, they were despairing, like, oh my God, this is going to be awful and stuff like that. And when they saw how Heath Ledger, brought this character to life, everyone really liked it because it was a legitimate performance and it brought something new to the table.
And to be even more current, the new Joker film, which is, it shows him wearing like some kind of orange suit and like he's got this red stuff on his eyes. And that's not the idea, that's not anything to do with the Joker that we know from, main pop culture. But people have fallen in love with that one in droves. And even though it's totally different, that's the best example of this. Yeah, fans are pliable. They're going for it.
Yeah.
Other examples, I remember, I heard after the fact about the Star Trek The Next Generation kind of outrage. People like, no Captain Kirk, no Spock, like a whole different thing. People were like, fans were not having it before it came out. And they did have a rough start, too, in their first year or two. But it became massive, and people loved it. And it was connected to the old Star Trek, and takes place in the same universe, although it's all new characters and 100 years later. But great. And also Battlestar Galactica, when they remade that, that's recent enough that I remember hearing about the outrage from original Battlestar Galactica fans, which I wasn't. I never saw the old show, but and nor did I wasn't worried about Star Trek either, personally. But they were remaking. In this case, it wasn't a sequel or whatever. It was a remake, a reimagined series.
Yeah.
And people were not into it at all in some corners of fandom. Even some of the original actors were coming out against it and spearheading this sort of effort to slam it. But it took off. People loved it on its own merits.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Exactly what you're saying. Yeah. So.
Exactly. And what was the other thing? The other thing I wanted to point out was, sometimes you are going to make an experiment and that will bomb. That's why it's called an experiment. All right. So the one I can think of that was handled well, at least after the bombing, was Batman Forever, the Schumacher one, Joel Schumacher Batman.
Right. Yeah.
Which I found
Batman and Robin.
entertained. But of course, yeah, it was like Adam West style Batman. Anyway, Schumacher though didn't go out and say, "Oh my God, you are also toxic for not liking my Batman and my Poison Ivy and
Bane.
my
Yeah.
Batman." So he even at some point he said, "I'm sorry. You know, I took this and I botched it and I'm sorry." And that's fine. People are more likely to accept the Schumacher Batman than they are likely to accept The Last Jedi because Schumacher didn't antagonize them. And he had the guts to admit that, okay, I didn't do well enough, so I'm sorry. It happened.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
interesting that he admitted that he went a bit
When
overboard.
you make an experiment doesn't always pan out. Sometimes it will fail, and that's fine.
Yeah, that Batman and Robin, not Batman Forever, it is objectively quite silly. You watched, Bane is like TV level kind of costume and sets, just
like Power Rangers level.
Yes.
On Bane's part in particular.
Yeah, Bane. It was bad. One of Schwarzenegger's last films before he became governor, I think, too. So,
oh wow, yeah.
I didn't do.
It's a very different mentality when people say, "Yeah, we tried something," or maybe even there were mistakes made behind the scenes that were kind of cynical in nature, like too much, like an effort to sell toys. So it was just kind of a big commercial for all these weird vehicles and everything. So stuff like that certainly was going on. That people have admitted that later, but to come out and handle it that way, even after they're silent for a couple of years, even maybe, but then to come out and say like, "Yeah, we tried. I wanted it to be good, and I'm sorry, I messed it up. I feel bad about ending the Batman franchise for 10 years." Contrast that with this very kind of elitist attitude that started. Like I said, I think it started with Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And went on to be huge with Star Wars. Or I guess maybe Star Wars was... Oh, Last Jedi was... this didn't happen with Force Awakens. So yeah, The Last Jedi came out after Ghostbusters. And to have this attitude of like, you're a racist, you're a sexist, like you're a man baby, or you're this, you're that, based on criticizing a movie, like that's insane. And these are people who didn't create it; they bought it. Then they sucked us in with nostalgia, with the old actors and characters we love, and then crapped all over them. Sorry, Oz, we weren't supposed to do this, I know, but I'm just trying to sum up, kind of. But this is the point: is this elitist kind of attitude.
No, I don't mind. It's a real world example, So
yeah, who are expecting us to give them money. It's like, are you kidding me? It's great.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I would be willing to consider that they honestly tried to create something new in Star Wars and it just didn't work out. And because there is genuine effort that has gone into this movie, at least as far as the aesthetics go, and
sure.
And the music score and everything. But when you go and act so picky, I mean, and it's not that I understand how terrible it feels when people tell you, you know what you have made is crap. I have been on the receiving end of that, and it was really not good. However, calling whoever told me, it's like, okay, if people don't like Without Moonlight, you are Greekist, or I don't know what. you are ageist, I guess, because it's all kids mostly. I don't know. Yeah, or okay, you are also sexist because I have female characters that are
and a
strong
female writer. Yeah.
yes, okay. How could I forget that? Of course. you are sexist because I'm a female writer. Okay, then how am I going to benefit from this? I'm going to make the person become even more militant against me. I'm going to have to reject everything that this person is saying and not benefit, even if there is some grain of truth in what they're saying. And I am going to have just toxicity, actual toxicity, like feeling like all the aggression still festering every time I try to get into this particular thing that I'm making. So it will stunt my art as well. I will not be able to go on.
And it shuts down discourse. It means that other people won't be feeling free to, discuss or be critical or have anything because they know they will be labeled sexist. So
exactly, it's like, guys, okay, I will not appeal to everyone. That's normal. And there are some things that I wish I could do better. Again, that's also normal. There is always improvement to be made in everything. And there are some criticisms that I have received, over the years and years that I find that are not objective, let's say. And I try to dismiss those, but that is that person's attitude and approach and what they are looking for in a story. I cannot provide that. That's fine. That doesn't mean that this person or these people are, cancelable. Like, oh my God, go cancel that person. How dare. I will not like it. I will be unhappy. But at this point, I don't think I will even bother to go. Like after a few rounds of interaction, I will just, okay, we agree to disagree. Let's move on, please, and enjoy a good thing.
You need to survey their stance. Like people aren't allowed to criticize without moonlight unless they're Greek, they're female, they're a certain age, or they're unless they're all those things. No. They're not.
Oh no, they are not. Nobody is allowed to criticize without moonlight. If they are Greek and criticize it, then they are traitors. If they are female and they criticize it, then they are deniers of their sex. If they are children and criticize it, they don't know any better. If they are old and criticize it, they are too old for this.
Yes.
Have I forgotten?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the comic is not for you people.
Exactly.
Anyone who doesn't like it, it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's only for the people who do like it. So
yes. Be drones and like everything I do and worship me, please.
Okay, well, we've over an hour, so I think an hour and 10 minutes, and this has been a good Quackcast 451. Okay, criticism is good.
And if you don't like the Quackcast, if you are not liking this Quackcast right now, you are a terrible person and you feel bad.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. You're evil and you suck. Okay. Thank you guys for being part of the Quackcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to this point. And our criticism of
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Go on now.